Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
Yep, happy Mother's Day for everybody who hasn't smothered their children. Keep the murdering to a minimum, or ideally not at all.
Let's stick with the not at all. And for those of you panicking, it's on Sunday, not today. We're giving you a heads up. Scurry on off to that store and buy your wife, mother, whoever in your life who has birthed a child a card or something.
It's not too late to Amazon Prime some shit.
Sure isn't. I might Amazon Prime me some stuff now.
All right. Who are we talking about today?
Well, I'm going to give you what you always ask for first, which
I did not ask for triggers.
I didn't give you triggers, you son of a bitch.
Oh, the people's names?
Nope. So our time is November 10th, 2010. I ain't going to look at you because it's too much. I ain't giving a speech.
My face. Okay.
Our location is in Ohio. So 2010, Ohio.
He said he weren't going to look at me. Stop making eye contact. Shit's weird.
Our triggers
I recognize
for those.
That face, by the way.
No. So the face was our triggers. Our breaking and entering, murder, kidnapping, and rape of a minor. So we're going to talk about all of the things that I just done said. So a divorce.
Bestiality.
I did not say that, but it's entirely possible. Anyway, so a divorced mother of two. Her name was Tina Harriman.
Is she a victim or the mother?
She was successfully co-parenting with her ex-husband, Larry Maynard, and both parents always put their two children.
Hold up. Did you say who we were talking about?
Both parents always put their two children first.
You just
Sarah, who was 13, and Cody, who was 9. As it should be. Kids should always come first in a divorce. Like their emotional needs.
Oh, I was going to say, usually it's the dissolution of some vows.
That's going to be a real long one. After losing her job, Tina moved Sarah, who, like I said, was 13, and Cody, who was 9, to Mount Vernon, Ohio, where she lived with her boyfriend, Greg Borders. Greg and Tina were on the brink of breaking up.
Wow.
And they'd been together for a while, but they were constantly fighting. I guess maybe living together kind of makes you realize the things you can't stand about your significant other or the things you absolutely
the children.
love. Yeah. Their new home was isolated from other houses with a large backyard that opened up to surrounding woods. Tina found a job at a local Dairy Queen, and life settled into a new normal for the family. Tina became best friends with her neighbor, whose name was Stephanie Sprang. She was a mother of 3, and the two women were inseparable. On November 10th, 2010, Sarah and her brother Cody went off to school. We're going to fast forward a few hours when 13-year-old Sarah Maynard and her 11-year-old brother Cody Maynard came home from school, and they entered their home as they normally would. It seemed weird because they were not greeted by their dog, who would normally be right there. As Sarah entered the house, she went to kick off her Airwalk tennis shoes, but stepped in something sticky. And when she looked down and lifted her foot, she saw what looked like a giant blood clot. She looked behind her, confused at her brother Cody, but Cody was staring past Sarah, looking absolutely horrified. Sarah followed Cody's gaze and saw a man that was standing in their house. Sarah told Cody to run, save himself. Cody turned to go out the door. Sarah ran.
This one sounds familiar.
Sarah ran. That means it's not original. I done worked hard on this case.
Go ahead.
So Sarah runs further into the house to try to get to a phone to call 911. She ran to her bedroom and she heard screaming coming from the hallway. And as she dials 911, before she could hit talk, the man came into her bedroom and told her don't hit send on that there call. This man proceeds to cut Sarah's hand with the already bloodied knife. He ties her up and leaves her in the kitchen. Sarah's bound, gagged, and blindfolded, listening to strange noises coming from the bathroom and the hallway. After a while, this man drags Sarah through the house, out to the garage, and then puts her into the back of her mom's car on top of plastic that Sarah described as lumpy. This man gets into the vehicle with Sarah and drives off in Tina's Jeep. Meanwhile, Sarah's mom, Tina, doesn't show up for work, and she's always reliable, always shows up on time, so her boss, Valerie Haythorne, calls her repeatedly. When she receives no response after several attempts, she decided to reach out to Tina's emergency contact number, who just happened to be her neighbor, Stephanie Sprang. As soon as she tried that number, she couldn't get a hold of Stephanie. So Valerie sends deputies out to the house twice to do a welfare check. They noted that the Jeep was still in the driveway and the lights were on in the house, but no one answered the door. There was nothing suspicious. So they left twice. After not being able to get a hold of her for an entire day, at the end of her shift, Valerie drove to the house to see what might have happened. And now I'm going to play a 911 call for you.
Sheriff Barber's office.
Yes, this is Valerie Haythorne. One of my employees did not show up for work this afternoon, which is totally uncharacteristic of her. I'm out of her house now. I just went in her home because I'm so worried about her. There is blood everywhere.
Don't go back in the house.
So at this point, police show up out at the house and they go in and start their investigation. There was blood all over the inside of the house. There was blood in every single room, but there were no bodies. And police also made a note that it looked like somebody tried to contaminate the crime scene by pouring what appeared to be motor oil on top of the blood. And there were several blood trails towards the bathroom in the hallway. Police could not find anyone else inside or outside of the home. The family, 11-year-old Cody, 13-year-old Sarah, their mother, who is 32-year-old Tina, and also the neighbor was missing because everybody's trying to reach out to her. So all 4 of these people are missing. There were bloody drag marks throughout the entire house. There was blood in every single room of the house except the garage and the hall bathroom. There was blood everywhere. There was not one area in the bathroom that wasn't blood soaked. And near the doorway, exiting the house, was a size 7.5 Airwalk shoe print, and it was like, I have a crime scene photo, but it's clear as day. Like, it says Airwalk on the bottom of the shoe, just like a shoebox that was found inside Sarah's bedroom. So police were hopeful she was still alive, but also kind of, there's a lot of blood, and to have somebody take her, they were scared for her. So naturally, police began investigating, and they start with none other than Tina's ex-husband, Larry. And then they noted that he has a violent criminal history, so he seemed like a natural suspect. But police couldn't find a clear motive, so they continued to interview people. They interviewed Greg Borders, who was the live-in boyfriend, and they had apparently gotten into a big, huge fight the same day, and Tina told him, "Get on, get going." She was looking for her own apartment. Greg was also the last person to show up, so police really liked him as their suspect. But he said, "I left the house at 3:30 in the morning to go to work at a Target distribution center, and he hadn't planned on returning for a few days because they'd been fighting, and he made plans to stay with a friend. His time cards all checked out. He was seen by his coworkers, and there was literally no way that he could have driven back to the house to do anything that obviously took place." So police tried to find any useful information by interviewing friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, anybody, but to no avail. There was nothing. Police were searching for Tina's missing vehicle, and some officers ended up finding it parked near a Kenyon College. They noted that there were 2 empty gas cans in the back of the Jeep. They also noted that there was a man in a vehicle that was parked nearby. They questioned the man. I guess maybe they were just asking him, like, "Did you see anything? Did you see you parked us here? What are you doing here?" And the man said that he was there waiting for his girlfriend, Sarah, but he couldn't remember her last name because they had just started dating. What? Yeah. Police let him go, but made note of the encounter. Meanwhile, back at the house, a team of detectives were processing the house, looking for leads that might help them find out what happened to all these people and whether or not Stephanie's even involved. They found 4 different blood types inside the house, learning eventually that it was blood from Tina, Cody, Sarah, and Tina's best friend, Stephanie. They also found non-human DNA, which will end up being the dog. 48 hours into this investigation, police finally make their way through the house because with all the blood everywhere, it was a lot to process. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like the garage, which had no blood, was last priority. But when they went in there, they found a Walmart bag, and the contents of the bag was a tarp, heavy-duty trash bags, and a receipt. So police take that receipt and scurry on over to Wally World, and they pull up the surveillance video of the register on the receipt that was in the bag. They fast forward to the time and date that was printed on that wonderful receipt, and they were shocked to see a man that they didn't recognize as any of their possible suspects. So now they had to track down who this guy was. At that particular Walmart, they had a security guy, and he noticed the vehicle that the guy had gotten into. Convenient. And lucky enough, the security guard said it was a Toyota Yaris.
It's a little car.
Yeah.
4-door. Sometimes 2.
Yeah.
Compact. How the heck did he put anybody in that?
So he took the mom's Jeep.
Oh, right.
So, which is crazy also because when police went to do the welfare check, when nobody could get a hold of them, he was still there. It just blows my mind. But during all of this investigating, this strange man has Sarah. Sarah was unconscious in the back of her mom's Jeep. She was woken up to being pulled out of the Jeep. She was, like I said before, she was bound, gagged, and terrified. And by this time, it was dark outside, and she said, and it felt very late. Sarah looked around trying to figure out where this man had taken her, but he immediately put a pillowcase over her head and shoved her into the trunk of another vehicle. So probably into the Yaris, which I wonder if she was in it when the police talked to him.
He did say his girlfriend, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah was terrified because she'd just been kidnapped. She has no idea where her mom or Cody were. Not talking a whole lot.
What would you like me to say?
I don't know.
About the blood painted everywhere? So far, it's not fucking funny.
Okay. So they weren't in the second car for long before Sarah was pulled from the trunk and put into a small bathroom of another house. This house had a weird smell, such a strong smell that Sarah could smell it through the pillowcase that was on her head. And it smelled of rot and outside.
He had gas.
He did not.
You don't know.
That's true, I do not. After a few hours, her kidnapper took her from the bathroom and put her into a basement. But before she could get her bearings, she was tossed onto a weird mattress on the floor. When Sarah's kidnapper finally removed the pillowcase, Sarah saw leaves. Leaves were everywhere. They were stuffed in a makeshift mattress, covering the floors, and hundreds of bags attached to the walls. You've heard this case? You fucking suck. Which, fun fact for your dinner parties, Claire, I have a vocabulary lesson for you. An obsession with them there trees and leaves is called dendrophilia or arborphilia. It literally means the love of trees. The term may sometimes refer to paraphilia. People are sexually attracted to or sexually aroused by trees. This may involve sexual contact with those hardwoods and sometimes softwoods.
So this is the one in our Salty Nuts episode last year that I was trying to tell you about with the people who really like their trees.
Technically, it was Dave that started talking about the tree huggers.
But we watched this case, I want to say IDTV or something.
Fuck you. How about
that? Because the pictures of, it's a lot of leaves.
It's a lot of leaves. That's a lot of effort, but the one room, they were 3 feet high. Do you know how many leaves? Because as you walk through them, they crunch down, they get compressed as they rot. He had to keep filling them in there. But he also
liked the fall.
He had, anyway.
I wonder what his electric bill is at.
So I can tell you. So this guy is a weirdo freak of nature. Get it? Do you get it?
Hilarious.
I thought so.
I hope that's one of your worst ones because they better get better.
I ain't got lots of jokes.
I'm glad to hear you admit it.
But back to the seriousness of this whole thing.
The leaves?
So Sarah's kidnapper was exhausted, so he tethered himself to Sarah. She was still bound and gagged, and he took a nap.
Can I make a note that I feel real bad for the people who are kidnapped? I mean, obviously the ones that are murdered I feel real bad about too. But the ones that are tethered to their abductor, that is a long, restless night.
Right?
That's it.
All right. So after he was napped, he then repeatedly raped and assaulted this traumatized teen. He fashioned a diaper out of a trash bag and he taped it over her body and would not allow her to clean herself.
He did not want her to ruin his leaf collection.
He didn't want her to wipe with the leaves.
Right. That would be ruining his leaf collection.
Yeah. He put gloves on Sarah's hands and layered the gloves with bags and duct tape.
What?
So she couldn't scratch him.
Oh.
Or, try to undo her.
Wouldn't it be easier to handcuff her?
So he didn't have that. While Sarah was trying to stay strong, she's been subjected to this man for 4 days at this point. We're on 4 days of a 13-year-old girl being raped repeatedly and...
trash bagged?
Yeah. Well, that, and he didn't feed her. If she wanted to eat, he gave her cereal that had curdled milk, or he killed squirrels and tried to feed the squirrels to her. And if she didn't want the squirrel,
she wasn't hungry enough.
But I think I'd rather not.
Depends if it was cooked. I don't, on a side note, I don't understand people who eat squirrel. It seems like they're not worth the energy to get said squirrel, and I've seen them running around plenty, so it seems like the meat would be like jerky.
People pay for jerky. Detectives were working hard to track down the stranger from the security footage. They look up how many Toyota Yaris's are registered in this tiny town. And also, remember that man I mentioned earlier who was nearby when they found Tina's missing vehicle?
That they talked to and made note?
Yep. He was driving a Toyota Yaris. They discover a house within walking distance of their crime scene. Once had a Toyota Yaris registered to that address, and the woman who owned the home was the mother of the man who owned the Yaris, and his name was Matthew Hoffman. Matthew no longer lived there with his mother. He lived 20 miles away in a neighboring town. Matthew Hoffman was born November 1st, 1980. He worked as a plumber's helper in Colorado. In 2001, he ended up setting fire to a client's vacation condo to hide the fact that he was staying in their condo without their consent. He was sentenced to 8 years, but was released on good behavior after he had done 6 years in prison. He had an arson charge, and he also owed $2 million in restitution for the damage he caused to the complex. Good luck. After being released from prison, Matthew returned to Ohio, where his mother lived. Eventually, in 2009, he bought a place of his own and lived with his girlfriend and her young son. He was working as a tree trimmer for a place called Fast Eddie's. I don't know why, but I'm glad you just chuckled because that made me laugh.
He really liked his job.
He really did. But eventually, Matthew and his girlfriend split up later in 2010. She and her son had moved out. Matthew became irritable, and some described him as paranoid, and he made the neighbors uncomfortable because this 30-year-old man would climb the single tree in his yard and just sit there watching the neighborhood for hours. Just sitting in a tree.
So it was a woodpecker that was in there, and it carved out a perfect hole for him.
I thought you were talking about him being the woodpecker.
No, but he used his pecker.
It's disgusting.
I'm just curious, the people who fuck trees, aren't they afraid of splinters? Or is it because it's like a live tree?
Are they actually inserting it anywhere? Or are they just rubbing against it?
I don't fuck trees, so I can't tell you how it's done. Google it.
I will not.
You find yourself on a watch list. You won't be allowed to any national parks.
I'll go to buy a tree from Home Depot, and they're going to be like,
you won't even be allowed to have a Christmas tree. You're like, no Douglas fir for you, lady. You're on the banned list.
Matthew loses his part-time job as a tree trimmer.
Because he was playing.
And due to poor job performance, And also they found out he lied on his job application
He wasn't
about
a
his
doctor.
felony conviction in
Ew.
Colorado. I feel like if he was honest,
What did he lie about?
that
He
he
didn't
didn't have a felony charge. But I feel like if you can explain it, I realized there isn't a good explanation for I was illegally staying in someone else's home, and so they wouldn't find out, I decided to burn it down.
Hmm.
But it wasn't like a crime against
Yeah, it was more of a trespassing
yeah,
rather than a violent crime.
correct. But he lied, so he got fired. So shit's just getting real shitty for
But
him.
he had to have been doing something that made them look into him.
They said poor work performance. He was
He was
probably
taking all
climbing
the
those
lead.
trees and crying because he did not want to chop them.
No, they're like, so your tree guy has been sitting out on that limb all day. He hasn't cut shit, and I'm pretty sure his pants are down. They were like, yeah, we'll refund you your money.
And I swear, after he finally did cut that limb, as he was walking it across the yard, he drug it between his legs and there was some hip thrusting going on. I don't know where he went, but he was gone for quite a while.
You think he ground down the stumps?
But he did.
I'm almost finished.
It's disgusting.
I call these hip thrusters.
Anywho, so at this point, he's lost his
Hold
girlfriend.
up. If he got a splinter in his penis, would it be workman's comp? I'll take that as a yes.
I mean, I feel like, I guess. I'm sure.
Mull that one over.
Yeah.
Add that to your Google search.
I will not. Tell you what, we can call us a tree trimming place and
Ask if they
them.
have anybody who likes to fuck trees because you got this real nice pine.
If you hire somebody, and you find out they're having sex with the trees and they get them a splinter in their pepe,
I better get a discount. It's work and play for them.
Business or pleasure, both. If you guys can hear any of the noise in the background, we are in Claire's house and she's got her some snoring dogs.
What the fuck? Sounds like it needs to be greased.
Anyway, like I said, Matthew's lost pretty much everything except the tree in his front yard. And he disconnects the power to his house, so his electric bill was nothing. And instead of buying food at this point, he resorts to catching squirrels in the trees.
No, business and pleasure again.
Well,
He's got a free hand.
Now it's just pleasure because he don't got no business no more. He's unemployed.
The business is in his right hand, the squirrel's in the left. At least he didn't turn to squirrel fucking.
Doesn't say how he killed him.
That's disgusting.
Anyway, so he's eating squirrels, and the neighbors stopped letting their kids play outside if they saw him outside because they were uncomfortable. Solid choice. I wouldn't leave my kids outside with a strange, weird 30-year-old man just chilling in a tree eating him some squirrel. His ex-girlfriend returned to pick up some of her things, and they got into a heated argument, and he choked her, so she filed a police report, but then withdrew it. So police pull up, and this is all what the police find out just by searching the Toyota Yaris in that town, because his mom's house was literally like walking distance, just right behind their house. And so police pull up Matthew's driver's license photo. Not only does he look similar to the man in the footage recovered from Walmart, but he's wearing the exact same shirt in Walmart that he was wearing in his DMV photo. So
he needs new apparel.
He sure do. Either that or he really liked that shirt, so he had lots of them, or he just decided he didn't need to wash no more since he didn't have him a girlfriend or job.
I'm going to say it's a pullover and it's more of a designer things. Shut up, Andrew. I said I'm just going to say it to myself.
It's a shirt with leaves all over it.
Although we call that camo here.
It's not camo.
He glued them?
No.
Maybe it wasn't meant to have leaves on it. He just walked through the house and they stuck.
You know,
but he couldn't exactly wash his stuff. He had no electricities.
They washed stuff before they had electricities.
The men folk didn't.
You're just going to have to trust me, okay? It was like a white shirt with orange leaves on it, like outlines of leaves. Police go and they get a warrant and they go kick in Matthew's door. And they were absolutely thrown when they saw
The leaves.
the leaves. And they found Matthew. He was asleep on the couch, surrounded by his precious leaves.
Surprised they saw him with his camo.
He wasn't wearing camo. Although you would think somebody that's obsessed with trees would wear camo. But anywho, police stumble into this leaf-obsessed man's home and search for any signs of Sarah and her family after they place Matthew under arrest, obviously. With Matthew safely in custody, the officers began searching each room. It's described by the officers as slightly disorienting because the floors were covered with leaves, the walls were lined with bags of leaves. Like, this man had grocery bags packed full of leaves, tacked to the wall, all the way up to the ceiling. You couldn't see wall. And the smell of the
I would
leaves.
actually have expected him to, when he's home, just relaxing, to be wearing like a leaf loincloth.
Well, it was November, so I'm guessing it was cold.
Fine. Then I'm surprised he wasn't all burrowed in the leaves and they actually saw him.
Yeah. Well, and then
Can you imagine how creepy as that would be when you walk in and there's leaves everywhere and you just see somebody's like eyeballs?
Well, and then the other thing police were saying is you don't know if he's got like an accomplice. Is he hiding the bodies under the leaves? You don't know if somebody's going to pop out at you. You don't know if he has like bear traps or anything. You have no idea what's in there.
I imagine that house would go up like a tinderbox.
Probably. The officers find nothing of interest pertaining to Sarah or her missing family on the main floor or the upstairs of Matthew's house. Eventually, officers find a hidden basement door. It was along the wall, covered with leaves and blocked by a dresser. When they moved the dresser aside, it opened to the basement door. As the officers descend into the basement, they find traces of Sarah, but no Sarah. They found ropes, a makeshift mattress, duct tape, but no Sarah. Feeling slightly defeated after not finding her, the officers start to head back up the stairs when one officer, now keep in mind, he has no electricity, so they're using their teeny tiny little flashlights and looking around. So one officer noticed a crevice in the corner of the dark basement wall, and almost like a hole in the wall that led to like a damp, leaf-filled crawl space. He shines his flashlight in that crevice, and there was Sarah. She was still bound and shoved away, but she was alive. She was so weak and traumatized from this whole ordeal, the officers carried the trembling 13-year-old up the stairs and out of the house to an ambulance. And now I'm going to play...
Can you imagine how rewarding it has to be the people who found her?
Right.
And alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize she's got a lot of shit to sort through mentally.
Mm-hmm.
But like... The win of they could have very well found another body.
Well, she still doesn't know that her mom is dead. I mean, she probably has suspicions, but it's one of those things that's, as my husband likes to say, too awful to be true. But now I'm going to play a recording of Sarah.
The day I was rescued, I clearly remember I was down in the basement and I heard these guys come down the steps and they said, "We're not down here to hurt you." And then they picked me up and put me in the ambulance.
So that was Sarah, poor thing. So at this point, she has been rescued. She was so disoriented at moments after her rescue, police said she told them she was late for school and asked them if they would take her to school. She just... it's 4 days of no food, no water, and all the physical abuse that she's having to go through. Unaware that Matthew had murdered her mom and Cody, Sarah told police that she thought Matthew killed her dog because it didn't greet her at the door, which is so sad. Police and EMTs rushed Sarah to the hospital to get her stable. Not only was she traumatized, but she was severely dehydrated. Her eyes were sunken in, her skin was pale, and she hadn't eaten aside from rotted food that was forced down her throat by Matthew, nor had she drank anything in 4 days. However, police didn't find any sign of Tina, Cody, or Stephanie in Matthew's house. Police already feared the worst, but now with no sign of the missing 3, they turned to Sarah and asked if she knew where they were. And she had the same question. Where was her mom and where was her brother? And she didn't even know that the neighbor was missing.
Yeah.
Police go back to Matthew. And his whole interrogation, you can watch it online. The first part, I think the first couple days that he was interrogated, he didn't even talk. Like, he didn't talk. He would do like sign language, and he signed to the officer, not real sign language, like his own version of sign language, and saying like he had a broken heart, which is why he did what he did. It's really stupid, but you can watch it. He's an idiot.
Maybe they interpreted wrong.
Well, he does like the heart with his hands and then does like a broken. I don't feel like you can misinterpret that.
Like, I don't know where the confusion was, but we ain't playing charades.
Right? But after several days of being held by police, he eventually confessed in exchange for a plea deal. For details on the crimes he'd committed, he wanted the death penalty off the table. And prosecutors agreed. Matthew ended up writing a 10-page confession. This is some of the details from his confession. 2 weeks after he choked his girlfriend, he started to plan a robbery. He told police that on the night of November 9th, 2010, he began staking out the house of Tina, Cody, and Sarah. He said he slept in a sleeping bag out back along the tree line, and he would sit in the trees just to observe. Creepy as fuck.
Right? Why did he pick them?
Because it was right there. He said he chose to break into Tina's house because the garage door didn't close all the way, and he said supposedly he initially broke in to rob the house while no one was home. He also said the house was secluded, and that was just prime opportunity. Yeah. The garage door didn't close all the way. No, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's prime opportunity.
Convenient.
Right. And he also parked his car at his mom's house. So, short walk away. He did buy a knife the week prior to this robbery, and he brought that along with a blackjack. Do you know what blackjack is? I didn't. I had to look it up.
Just the card game.
Yeah. So I literally have, do you know what a blackjack is? Not the card game. So according to good old Google, blackjack is also known as the sap or the slapper.
What?
Yeah. It's a heavy leather pouch, 8 to 12 inches long, filled with lead or something like a flexible steel rod. Unlike a baton, a sap's size and shape allow it to be concealed inside a pocket. So it's basically like a leather, like a lock in the sock. Has something heavy inside of a bag and you whack somebody with it. Apparently the military use it.
I'll have to ask Dave that one.
Yeah. While Matthew was ransacking a bedroom of the house, Tina came home. He said he panicked and he dragged Tina into a bedroom. He said he hit her over the head with the blackjack, hoping to knock her out so that he could flee. But after he hit her a few times, she was screaming, bleeding, and fighting for her life. So he whacked her a few more times. She did not get knocked out. So I'm guessing whatever he stuck in there was not heavy enough.
And he's seen too many movies where it's a one ding and they're taking a nap for the day.
Yeah. So he said he panicked because all of a sudden another woman came into the room who was Stephanie, the neighbor, and Tina's BFF. And supposedly in a panic, Matthew stabbed Tina twice in the back to shut her up, then set his sights on Stephanie, who was fleeing and screaming for help. He said he chased her down the hall, jumped on her back, and they ended up somehow in the teenage girl's room because he assumed it was a teenage girl because of the stuff that was in there. He said he wrestled the woman, who was Stephanie, to the ground. He stabbed her several times. He said he didn't plan to murder Tina or Stephanie, but after making sure Stephanie was dead, he returned to Tina in the other bedroom and stabbed her a few more times to be sure they were both dead. After he killed Tina and Stephanie, he claimed that he paced the house, realizing what he'd just done and trying to figure out what he should now do. And out of frustration, he said he killed the family's dog, a miniature pinscher named Tanner, because it wouldn't stop barking.
Poor puppy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised it didn't bite the shit out of him.
Right?
I had a miniature pinscher rip my shoe off one time.
What?
Not when I was trying to murder its household family. Just saying.
Well, he then dragged the two women's bodies and the dog's bodies into the bathroom in the hallway.
So Dave did know what a blackjack was. I asked if he Googled it or he knew it. He said he knew it. It's a short club, not a baton.
Correct. I said not a baton, unlike the baton. He went to go process their bodies, which I don't know why, but I find it really disgusting that he says process their bodies. He said he was dismembering the bodies in the bathtub when he heard Sarah and Cody return home from school.
I don't understand the leap to tree fucking to killing people. I guess it's not a leap. I guess it's just mental illness.
I wonder if prosecutors agreed to take the death penalty off the table because they knew there was a chance they weren't going to get it anyway, since he had obvious mental health issues and therefore could
typically collect leaves and light in their house with it.
Right. And since it was obvious that he had mental health issues, he wouldn't be able to be executed because we don't kill our crazies here. So he said when he was dismembering the bodies and Sarah and Cody came home, he said that's when he jumped out of the bathroom in the hallway and began stabbing Cody in the back of his head and in his chest because Cody was trying to get out the front door. Matthew stabbed Cody 10 times and nearly decapitated him from ear to ear. It's
poor baby.
Horrific. He then ran after Sarah to stop her from calling for help. He said he couldn't bring himself to kill her, so he decided to tie her up using the cord from a fan that was in her bedroom. He blindfolded and gagged the young teen and left her in the kitchen. I call bullshit, by the way. He stalked this girl and killed everyone in her family because he wanted to have her.
Yeah, but maybe he planned to kill her, like subconsciously.
I don't think so. I think he wanted to kidnap her. He had a makeshift bed. Like he was prepared to have her in his house because that's not where he slept.
Maybe she used it for his mom when she visits.
Ugh.
What does her mom say about it?
I don't know.
Did she move out because she told him to stop bringing leaves in? I done swept this carpet twice.
Why are there leaves everywhere?
Now you stapled them to the walls. That was not an alternative. Makes you rethink. Maybe he was one of those elementary schoolers that, you know, when you stencil the leaves or like to do the rubbings.
Oh, he liked to do the rubbings, all right.
He sure did. But I'm just saying, maybe he liked doing that too much. Did you investigate by any chance? Like what the start of that now when you did your Ryan's Field thing with the licking of one's wound at a young age was the blood sucking of your vampire one. But did you look up any at all? The leaf collecting and wood masturbating circus folks?
They don't know where that starts other than a love of trees. And like I said,
a love of parks. Does it start with hiking?
Some people can just put lots of trees in their yard.
And not fuck them.
And not have sex with them, yes.
I'd be one of those. I can appreciate the trees at a distance without getting all randy.
Spoiler alert. Claire and I planted 26 trees in her yard today.
Not to fondle. Totally unrelated to the case.
Completely unrelated.
I didn't do it for Dave. Although he said his choice would be pecan, so he could make a pie afterwards.
You said you did. But he could make
only because he was sad when I said I wouldn't eat a pie after he fucked the tree. I collected. There's no hand washing station in the woods, so he would have been collecting those pecans.
What if he collected them first?
It was like a tree foreplay.
And pecan pie is sticky.
You know why.
Anyway, I gave her a ton of cherry trees. Anywho, the knife that he purchased the week before, by the way, was described as a serrated hunting knife. And that's what he used to dismember Tina and Stephanie. He also used that knife to dismember Cody and the dog.
It's a miniature pincher.
I don't know.
What'd you have to dismember the dog for? It's the size of a football.
It turns out, by the way, that lumpy plastic that Sarah was shoved on top of were the bags of everybody's body parts in the back of the Jeep, which that's horrible to find out that you were placed on top of their bodies.
It's better than underneath, I guess.
It's disgusting either way. This poor girl. Matthew then drove Sarah and the bodies of Tina.
He could have put them all in the same bag.
He would have had to be able to lift it and not have the bag tear.
He could have still loaded her in the back. Been like, tucking her in.
Okay, so then Matthew drove Sarah and the bodies of Tina, Cody, and Stephanie and Tanner 20 miles away back to his house after he switched to his vehicle. He told officers he then put Sarah in the bathroom and stashed the bodies. He dropped the bags down into a hollowed out tree that was in a nature preserve called, I'm not sure how to say this, but Kokosing Lake State Wildlife Area in Knox County, Ohio. Mind-blowing detail, the opening to the tree was 60 feet tall. They still don't know how he got the bodies up and over to drop them into the tree.
He was a good climber.
Sure was.
He had a lot of practice.
Police had to cut a hole into the tree. I figure he had those shoes that had the spikes in them.
Yeah.
Which you would think somebody that likes trees that much would think that they're hurting that tree. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the spikes. But police had to cut a hole into the tree to retrieve the remains of Sarah's family and friend. Matthew told police that when officers found him near Tina's vehicle, he was returning there to get the gas cans because he was planning to burn the house down. But his plans got screwed up because Tina's Jeep broke down. She was having some issues with her vehicle, and he wasn't aware of that. So Matthew Hoffman pled guilty on January 6, 2011 to the murders of Stephanie Sprang, Tina Harriman, Tina's son Cody Maynard, and the abduction and rape of Sarah Maynard. He was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the 10 separate felony charges. Sarah went on to live with her dad, Larry, and her stepmother, Tracy, and her 2 half-brothers. But that's not where things end for her. I know you said you done heard this case because you watched it on TV a while ago. Did you hear about this part?
You haven't said it yet, so I don't know.
Do you know what happens to her afterwards?
Maybe.
In 2013, so 2 years after he's been put in jail, Larry and Tracy, so her dad and stepmom, were both arrested for physically abusing Sarah. She survived all of this shit and then was physically abused by her dad and stepmom. According to the court documents, Sarah said that Tracy, who was 33, kicked her down a flight of stairs, and Larry, who was 44 at the time, punched her in the back and threatened to kill her. Sarah had reported the alleged incidents to a school administrator who turned around and reported the abuse. A judge ended up granting a protective order requiring Larry and Tracy to stay away from Sarah. The charges were eventually dropped after Larry and Tracy attended parenting classes, and I feel like the prosecution kind of coaxed that out of her, like, you can live with your grandma, they're going to stay away, they're going to take these parenting classes, let's just, because it got attention that this girl who survived this horrific ordeal is now
enduring more.
And Sarah, along with the author Robert Scott, went on later to write a book about her experience called The Girl in the Leaves.
That's fucked up.
Right? She began a victim advocacy program with the help of her grandmother while she was still a teenager. She also adopted Elsa, who is a police dog who was on the team that helped locate her dismembered family. So when that dog got retired, she got it, which I think is kind of sweet. It looks like your dog. And Sarah is now a mother of 2 and is studying pediatrics with a grant that was given to her by Dr. Phil and the University of Florida. I'm going to play one last clip of Sarah, and this is her as an adult.
Of course, we feel days, where we feel hopeless and we want to give up. Of course, I'm sure all of us feel that way, but we can't. It made me become a really strong woman. It made me become a really strong mother.
But that is Sarah Maynard and how she was not a victim, but a survivor. Dude is crazy.
Yes. I still like to know what his mother thinks.
Right?
She used to live with him.
She sure did.
Don't blame her for leaving.
Well,
But I'd like to know when the Twiggy stuff started. Like when he was a boy. Was he out in the shrubbery cramming leaves in his ass?
So ew.
You don't know.
So
Pine cones?
Some people say that he was using the leaves as insulation because he had no electricity. And it was November in Ohio. But it takes a long time to accumulate that many leaves.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been quicker to get a job and pay your fucking bill.
Right? 3 feet high on the floor, and look at one wall. Like, I don't know where you guys are when you're listening to this, but take a look at one wall and how many bags. He didn't fill them and tie them, but he filled them and laid them flat. Like if you lay a grocery bag flat and then put a thumbtack in the tops of the handles and tack it to the wall and then stack that. To how many bags of leaves would it take to insulate that one wall, let alone your house? That is an enormous amount of leaves. That's not something that you do.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.